Sit back and relax and enjoy the show with Big OG. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.
It's finally happening, guys. After decades of the federal government closing the door on federal felons getting their gun rights restored, they are reopening a program that they had closed for decades that is going to allow federal convicted felons to apply to get their gun rights back.
The Trump administration is considering a way for convicted felons to restore their access to legally owning a firearm. Queen City News anchor Alicia Barnes and Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes takes us through those arguments.
The Justice Department is releasing plans to create a process for those with criminal convictions to restore their gun rights. So this decision sparking alarm that it will return firearms to those of convicted violent crimes. The interim rule follows an executive order from President Donald Trump last month directing a review of the country's gun restrictions to assess any ongoing infringements. Let's bring in our Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes to this conversation. Lots to discuss here because restoring gun rights to those who have been convicted of violent crimes
I want to go into a little bit of detail about it, talk to you about who's eligible, what are the waiting periods, what are the disqualifications going to be, and when you can expect to see this program actually put into law for you as a convicted felon to be able to petition the federal government to get your gun rights back. A little bit about me. I'm a violent convicted felon. A few years ago, I petitioned my local court judge to get my gun rights restored. I have a CCW. I own multiple firearms. I go to the range. I had to say, I've had a lot of comments saying that the courts won't recognize this. The police won't recognize this. They'll still violate you for having guns. That's not true. Once you petition as a convicted felon to get your gun rights back and it's granted by the court, it becomes law. Everybody has to recognize it. Respect my daughter! I say that to say the law that the federal government is passing is very, very similar to the one that I did in my state to get my gun rights restored. There's multiple states across the country that have a process for state convicted felons to petition and get their gun rights restored. But some states don't allow federal felons to petition and get their gun rights. And that's the reason why the federal government is bringing back this program. It's particularly for federal felons, but also for states that don't have a process to allow people to get their gun rights restored. So in the early 90s in this country, there was a process where you could file a petition. The petition would go through the ATF and they would look at you on an individual basis and say whether or not they thought you deserved to get your gun rights back after being in prison. This is essentially the same program getting revitalized through the Department of Justice because the Department of Justice is the one that's going to oversee this program. So just like the way that I petitioned to get my gun rights back, you are going to have to prove two things to the federal government. One, that you're not a danger to society, and two, that giving you your firearm rights back is not against the public interest. So they want to make sure that crazy person, you don't have any mental disabilities, and that if they give you your gun rights back, you're not going to use that to go commit another crime.
Trust me.
So there's a few people who are automatically going to be disqualified from applying for this program. That is sex offenders, terrorist related crimes, people who are currently on probation or parole, people with restraining orders, and people who actively use drugs. This rule is going to set up a waiting period of 10 years for some of the serious offenses and 5 years for the lower level offenses. It's not going to automatically disqualify you from petitioning the government before that 10 years is up. So if you wanted to wait 2-3 years before you got out of prison, after you got out of prison or off of parole to try to send your petition to the government, then they will allow you to do that. But what they're saying is that they recommend that you wait 10 years to prove that you are no longer a danger to society. This is because they have in their mind that certain crimes have a recidivism rate within 10 years and certain crimes have more recidivism rate in 5 years. And after that time period passes, you're not likely to reoffend and not likely to be a danger to society. Thus, they feel more comfortable giving you your gun rights back. Me, I only waited 2 years after I got out of prison to file for my gun rights back. And I think I was probably off of PRC for about 2 months. And I still won and I still got my gun rights back. So that's not to say that you're automatically going to be disqualified. What the wording says is that it has to be an extraordinary circumstance for them to allow you to get your gun rights back What I will say about that waiting period, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm somebody who went through this process without a lawyer and got my gun rights back. I don't think that you all should just flood them with applications as soon as this program becomes available. The reason I think that would be a mistake is because you're not going to have a lot of time to look at case law and see why people were being denied. I think one of the biggest things that helped me when I applied to get my gun rights back is I looked at a lot of the reasons that people got denied. I looked at the losses. That was the main thing I wanted to pay attention to, is why are people losing these cases? Why is the judge deciding to not give these people their gun rights back? And I made sure that when I filed my petition, I didn't have any of those errors. I didn't have any of those mistakes that got people denied. So if you allow some time to pass and you are able to look at this new process and these new judges, the attorney general, and some of the reasons that they're saying that they don't want to give people their gun rights back, that's going to give you a better chance to not make the mistakes that other people made when they filed their petitions. Don't rush this. Take your time. This law isn't going to go anywhere once it's passed. So I didn't want to get too detailed with this video. I'm curious if you want me to go in and do a more thorough breakdown of this process, line by line, telling you the exact exemptions, the exact requirements, who's eligible, and my opinions on things that are going to get people denied when they file this process. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just somebody who's went through this process successfully as a violent felon and got my gun rights restored. So let me know down in the comments, do you want me to make a more thorough breakdown of this process? And what are your opinions on this process? Me personally, I believe that this is going to be helpful to a lot of people, as the government believes. They said that they expect over 1 million applicants within the first year. I still caution you, don't rush this. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. That way this news can reach more people. My goal with this channel is to show that if you give a felon their gun rights back, that they're not going to be a danger to society. They're not going to be a detriment, to be an example to the attorney general, different judges that you guys are going to go in front of. Hey, look at this guy. He's got his gun rights back. He's doing the right thing. He's on this channel promoting positive firearms use. And I really want this message to spread. So please subscribe to this channel. I got a lot more news coming for you. I'm going to follow this case. And I don't know, maybe I'll make videos telling you exactly why people got denied, because I think that's going to be the most helpful thing for you guys to learn, is why the government is not giving these people their rights back. Anyways, thank you guys for your time. And don't forget, guard your freedom, my friends.
So the DOJ now, under this proposal, they were very specific about who this would benefit. Explain that a little bit.
I mean, you're talking about folks with violent crimes. I mean, this is it's as specific as you can get. At the end of the day, these are folks that typically, if you were convicted of a crime, you would have been barred from having access to a firearm. And now they're saying, no, you will not be barred from having access to a firearm.